So we've talked about strength and endurance. Let's get into how Whitebeard would fare going against some of the other Yonko, and why I think he's still stronger than the Yonko. The first one we'll get out of the way is Shanks, and I say that because we don't really have a lot of feats for Shanks. We know he's got OD Haki, whether it's Conquerors, whether it's Observation, whether it's Armament, we know he's the guy for Haki. And that's impressive, but we know that Conquerors doesn't really have a big foothold in a high tier battle. The most you get is Clashing Conquerors. Observation Haki. We know that while that has plenty of helpful properties, there are certain things that kind of best Observation Haki. And if you can match it, or if you have very good Observation Haki yourself, it's less of a threat. Armament being the biggest one in a combat scenario. Again, like I said earlier, I don't think Armament really helps fighting against earthquakes. I think it does well in your wheelhouse to have Haki to fight someone, but if Whitebeard punches you with an earthquake, you're going to feel that whether you have good Haki or not. So for Shanks being a Haki master, I don't really see that giving him too much of a leg above Whitebeard. What Shanks does have over Whitebeard, I want to say, will be speed and ranged attacks. And the ranged attacks has an asterisk above it because we don't really know, again, how Shanks attacks. Different forms of media, like games mainly, have shown that he has these Haki imbued sword slashes. And you wonder if he does things on the scale of Mihawk, where a lot of his attacks are long distance but massive sword slashes. And be that the case, or be it to where he's a close combat fighter, I think Whitebeard can handle both of those. I don't think the sword slashes are going through the earthquake barrier. And there's question to this as far as Mihawk versus Whitebeard, when Mihawk wants to test the distance between the two. And Whitebeard essentially doesn't flinch when this attack's coming for him. There is an argument to be made that he knew Jozu was coming, and he knew Jozu would stop it. But you have to question, if in any case, if something were to happen, would he be able to block it? And my answer to that would be yes. My answer to that would be he just uses an earthquake punch. And essentially he cancels out that energy with his own. And I think that Whitebeard's punch is probably packing more strength than Mihawk's slash. So I don't really see what Shanks would bring to a fight versus Whitebeard to have over him, to be able to match the overwhelming strength that Whitebeard has. So I think Shanks is losing. Next, I'll go to Big Mom. And Big Mom is a weird one because she has very good strength feats as far as being able to take out giants at 5 years old, being able to walk through anything, walk through earth, having the iron balloon body, essentially taking no damage from any attack unless she's affected by Mother Caramel's picture. So she has defensive feats, she has offensive feats that are pretty well fleshed out and pretty tremendous. However, I don't think she's as strong as Whitebeard. While he obviously didn't do it when he was 5 years old, Whitebeard was casually fighting with giants and having no problems with them. When we see Big Mom fight them, she's fighting the old retired giants, and it's more or less she does enough damage to where he can't heal, then she outright beats him. It's still an amazing feat, but I think there's some comparison that can be had there. Whitebeard, of course, wouldn't fear Big Mom, so that kind of rules out a portion of her soul fruit powers. You have Prometheus and Zeus, but I don't think they are packing enough power to put down Whitebeard for any amount of time. And the reason I'll say that is because I'll take Prometheus and I'll liken him to Akenu. Akenu filled Whitebeard's body with lava. Akenu blew Whitebeard's head off, and that didn't stop Whitebeard. Whitebeard kept going. I don't think Prometheus is putting out anywhere near that much firepower. So I don't think Prometheus is doing anything to stop Whitebeard. I don't know how an earthquake would affect Prometheus. For the most part, he's pretty immune to most attacks. Even hockey doesn't really mess with him. You have to use water. So while Whitebeard may not be able to necessarily stop Prometheus, it would be hard for Prometheus to do lasting damage to Whitebeard. And for Zeus, I'll liken him to Kizaru. Now these two are a bit more separate. As far as a comparison goes, it's lightning and light. But I guess what I'm going to say is that Kizaru is able to do damage to Whitebeard, and Kizaru can't stop him. You know, Kizaru shoots him with light beams multiple times, and that doesn't really, it slows Whitebeard down but doesn't stop him. What we've seen from Zeus didn't even kill Judge. It knocked him out for a little bit, but he was back up and he was fighting Snacks near the end of the arc. So I don't think that's carrying enough damage to take out Whitebeard. And those two also fall in the line of Big Mom kind of has to incorporate her fighting with them. You know, Big Mom's not going to land a lightning bolt on Whitebeard, because that requires her to be, one, in close range, and two, kind of keeping Whitebeard in one spot. And those two things will never happen with Whitebeard. So what about her sword techniques? What about Elbaf Spear? What about Cognac? How do those perform in this fight? My opinion, not too well. From what we've seen of Elbaf Spear, it is a devastating move that people can dodge, that hasn't actually hit anyone since it's been used. And even not dodging, I will honestly say, how does it fare against a Quake Punch? Can it go through a Quake Punch, or can Whitebeard match that strength? I think he can. Even if he doesn't match the strength that comes out of that, I think he can at least cancel that strength out. I don't think ranged attacks like that are going to be able to get to Whitebeard. And to go on a tangent about the ranged attacks, we didn't really see an aggressive amount in Marineford. We saw cannonballs, we saw bullets, which Whitebeard didn't actively try to dodge or stop. He mainly just took those and kept moving. However, these big attacks, I don't think he's going to be able to just tank. I don't think he's that much of a monster where he can just, take an Elbaf Spear to the face and be okay with it. I think he's going to have to counter, but I think that when he does counter, he can cancel or outmatch that strength. So what does Big Mom have that puts her above Whitebeard? I'm pretty hard pressed to say anything. She has the iron balloon, but again, Whitebeard's power works off vibrations. So in a similar vein to how Jinbei's able to kind of affect her body with water, Whitebeard can do the same with vibrations. Iron isn't immune to vibrations, it's not immune to shockwaves. If he punches and creates that glass barrier and punches through her, she's going to feel that shockwave. Her body's going to feel that. Whether it destroys anything on the outer rim of that iron balloon, maybe not. Maybe it's that durable to where it can tank a Whitebeard punch, but she's going to feel it on the inside. It's going to rattle something. How many of those she can take? Honestly, I'm not sure. Big Mom is a monster. She does get played down a lot, but she is still a monster. So the amount of damage she can take is probably pretty high. But I think that Whitebeard can take more. From what we've seen, Whitebeard can take more. Now, Big Mom has never been stopped by taking too much damage, but we see a lot of times where Big Mom will get hit by something because she's not being as careful as she should. She takes hits from Nami using Zeus. She takes hits from Jinbei. And these are all hits that she took in some form of crazed hunger mode. So I will give her some lenience on that, because I don't think that's a fair representation of how Big Mom fights. I think she would be more conscious when she's fighting outside of the hunger pangs and things like that. However, I don't think that she's, even in her right mindset, a very cautious thinker when it comes to combat. I think she's very much like, I want to kill you now, so I'm going to kill you now. So therefore, I see Big Mom losing to Whitebeard as well. Now let's move on to Kaido. Kaido is the biggest contender for could he be stronger than Whitebeard? And I think that's pretty well noted by him having the title of strongest creature, of land, sea, and air, you know, if it's a one-on-one bet on Kaido. But these are all things that are mentioned after Whitebeard's death. Beforehand, we don't hear anything about that. We don't have any confirmation of that. It's unknown. You know, we don't know if Kaido was always, you know, land, sea, or air, he's the strongest. Or if he got that title, you know, during the 2-year time skip. We don't know when he got the title. Or at least, I don't think it's been revealed. I know the Ace novel is kind of building on some things and giving us some information. But I don't think it's said anything about him being the strongest creature, you know, for a long time, or at least during Whitebeard's era. So what does Kaido have that makes him the biggest threat? The top thing is speed. Speed, I think, is Whitebeard's main weakness. It realistically could never be strength, and I don't think it could be smarts, because, as stated by Sengoku, Whitebeard's not only a powerhouse, but he knows how to fight a fight. He knows strategy, he knows tactics. He's not an idiot to just rush into a fight. He's not a musclehead, which is what Kaido is. To what we've seen so far. Kaido's a lot more of the, you want to fight, let's do this. But we know that Kaido has at least one move that appears to have speed blitz potential, and that's Thunder Bagua. I don't think Whitebeard's reflexes are as good to catch a speed blitz. So could Kaido get a Thunder Bagua off? I think it's possible. Will it take him out? No. Will it, you know, weaken him enough to where Kaido could land some kind of finishing blow? No. For most, we saw that it took out Gear 4 Luffy, which is impressive, but we know that there's a huge discrepancy between the power level of someone like Kaido and the power level of someone like Luffy. Like, it makes sense that Speed Blitz does that much damage to Luffy. It's not going to take out Whitebeard. And that's kind of the only move that we see that has the speed potential. Power-wise, I still put Whitebeard above. And I do that because Whitebeard had the title of World's Strongest Man while Kaido was alive. Arguments can be made about the difference between man and creature, but I think that man stands above creature. I think when you say creature, you're looking predominantly at animals, you're looking at beasts, you're looking at things that aren't human. And them not being human doesn't mean they boast strength above a human. It just means that they're a different breed. Now Kaido does have his dragon form, and with that he has Boro Breath. While that's a better move for a fight between someone like Whitebeard, where not only do you have the advantage of, you know, flying and being less close to Whitebeard, but you have a ranged move that we've seen blow through mountains. So this is the biggest thing I would compare to putting against Whitebeard's Quake Wall and seeing how that fares. At most, I think they cancel. And Whitebeard has to do what he did with Ron's, where he keeps that wall up and he applies pressure to it constantly, to where he's constantly sending back some force to cancel that out. Can he do it? I think he can. I think he's more than capable, because it's one focused attack. And I think that's the big thing, is that when it's one focused attack, I think that the Earthquake Barrier has good potential to counter or overpower it. If it were a spam of different Boro Breaths coming at Whitebeard, I think that's a different story. I think that's where you start to overwhelm Whitebeard. But if it's a one-on-one fight, most likely all these attacks are going to be coming from one point. And being able to defend and counter one point of attack is a strong suit of Whitebeard. And that brings up his invulnerability. You know, Kaido can't die, he can't be killed. He can't be hung, he can't be guillotined, he's impenetrable, invulnerable, invincible, however you want to put it. Well, we've seen that that's not entirely true. We see the scar in his chest. We see who's been able to pierce his skin. We see what it takes to pierce his skin. And so we know that he has some level of invulnerability, but it's not complete. So with the proper haki, can he be pierced? Yes. Even without the haki, I think it goes back to the earthquakes and the vibrations. Vibrations, I think, are just an OP way to overpass natural defenses. So it's like, yes, you have this impenetrable hide, so to speak, but can it block a shockwave? Can it block vibrations going through your body from the world's strongest man? I don't think so. And it even goes to show that Kaido's been defeated by Yonko multiple times. He's been captured. Now, the details around that are hazy. We don't know if he willingly did it. We don't know if he was weaker. We don't know if he was just playing around. But the facts are there that at some point he was, defeated or captured by other Yonko. So even though he boasts the best ability to fight Whitebeard in a 1v1, I think Kaido still loses. And now to kind of wrap up the 1v1 talk, I want to focus on what we saw in Akenu versus Whitebeard. Now, Akenu is someone who is noted to be on a similar tier, if not, a step or two below a Yonko. People put him at that power level. And what I want to note is that Akenu fought with Whitebeard multiple times, and he landed multiple serious hits, but he never beat Whitebeard. At no point did he do more than slow Whitebeard down for a little bit. Whereas Whitebeard, he took him out for a little bit. Akenu got back up, he fought with the commanders, but he was legitimately out. He fell to the ground, he couldn't get back up, he fell into a hole, and he wasn't even drawn. He was just out of the panels for a while. And I say that to point out two things. Someone of that power level was able to land multiple hits on Whitebeard, do tons of damage, and couldn't stop him. And on the other side, someone of that power level took hits from Whitebeard and had to take a seat, and had to sit down for a little bit, think about things, and then come back later. So I use the fights between Whitebeard and Akenu, even though they're more of skirmishes or brief interactions more than full-fledged fights, I'll use those to kind of gauge what happens when you get into a 1v1 with Whitebeard. I think what people tend to see in this argument is that if another Yonko went to Marineford and tried to save someone, tried to do the same thing that Whitebeard did, they would do it better. And I don't disagree with that. I think that if Big Mom goes to Marineford, with her entire crew, I think they are successful. And the main reason I think so is because the commanders with her have more variety in their abilities. You have Katakuri, who that one's hard to beat. You have the admirals, you have the warlords, but you have Katakuri. Katakuri is enough to tangle with some of the strongest there are there. He's got the OD observation haki. He can see the future. He's got the Mochi. He's got Conqueror's haki. He's got armament haki. He's got advanced armament haki. So, and this may go to how haki's been shown and how haki wasn't shown, and that whole debate, but there's something to be said to how much Katakuri can do on his own and how useful he'd be in that fight. And then you have Cracker, who can create an army of nigh invulnerable biscuit soldiers to fight on your side. So you have someone who can create things that are stronger than, most fodder. Something that can probably tangle with, a vice admiral. I'd probably say that's the highest, but a vice admiral, if you will. Because it took Gear 4 Luffy to do something to those biscuit soldiers. And I think Gear 4 Luffy is around admiral level. So I wouldn't be too far off to say that a biscuit soldier can fight with a vice admiral. And I think that's a big portion of their fighting force. Because, they only have 3 admirals, they only have the 1 fleet admiral, they only have the 1 giant squad, but they have quite a few vice admirals. And to be able to hold those off with just foot soldiers, you know, that's good for a war like this, where Big Mom doesn't need to fight every single person. And then you look at how Kaido would do. And with Kaido, I mean, he just flies in there. Kaido flies in there, Boro breath, and he's just wiping out people. You have very few people who have the ability to fight in the sky. So you got what? Doflamingo, you got Kizaru, and that's about it. Everyone else is kind of just on the ground trying to parry a Boro breath. And then you have the fact that if he wants to, he can go into his human form, come down there and start handing out Thunder Bagwas. So I think Kaido in himself has the potential to walk through Marineford. You know, he's not getting affected by bullets, swords, or anything coming from someone less than Admiral level. He's just not getting affected by it. No reason for the warlords to try. There's nothing that they can do to stop him. I mean, you have Doflamingo, who was doing a lot in the war, who didn't want to clash with Kaido at all. You know, he would rather face the admirals than go against Kaido. So I think that kind of gives you an idea of how that would work out, because Doflamingo is one of the strongest of the warlords, and he doesn't want that fight. So I don't think many of the other warlords are going to be able to do anything of that nature. You know, you have what I call my top three. You have Doflamingo, you have Kuma, you have Mihawk. Doflamingo doesn't want to fight him. Kuma's a robot at this point, so he can't do the hex thing that we love. And I don't know if Mihawk's cuts can go through him, and that might be a controversial statement, but we don't know. We just don't know. Shanks seems to have a tight-knit crew, and I think he would have the ability to kind of clear a way through Marineford without doing as much fighting. Him, I'm a little iffy on, just because, again, we don't know much about Shanks. I imagine a lot of the foot soldiers he would just take out with Haki, and the rest of his crew kind of clean up the rest, but there might be a numbers game that plays into this that's too overwhelming, because not only does Marineford have numbers, but they have strong numbers. You know, they have admirals, fleet admirals, they have Garp, they have warlords, so they have a lot of strong names, and a lot of people would kind of need to counterbalance that. So yes, generally speaking, the other Yonkos would have better feats in Marineford, but that doesn't mean they are stronger than Whitebeard. Just because they can carry out this rescue better doesn't mean that they have better strength, better endurance, better overall power. You know, they're just better suited for that situation. That's what's better about them. But are they stronger than Whitebeard? My final conclusion, no, they are not. Whitebeard is still the strongest when he dies. Whitebeard is still the strongest. Now, you may have noticed that I haven't really been talking about Blackbeard, and I don't plan to. I think that it's obvious how Blackbeard does against Whitebeard, seeing that we see these two fight in Marineford, and he needs his entire crew in order to stop Whitebeard, and that even doesn't kill him, it just stops him. So I think Blackbeard now has strength that would put him somewhere in the same tier or near Whitebeard, but we haven't seen him do anything, so I'm not even going to jump into that. I think as we see more, we'll get to learn if he's truly reached that level of power. So thank you guys for watching. Please comment below if you agree, if you disagree. I would love to hear some thoughts. Maybe there's something else I can kind of dive into to further explain my point. I also love to see the outside point of this, so please let me know how you feel. Thanks.